Welcome to episode 307 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. Joining me in a moment is Thomas Roggendorf, the CEO at Cpost International, the postal operator of Curaçao. So what can we learn from a postal operator in the Caribbean? Plenty, as it turns out. A unique set of circumstances has led to, well, let's just say a unique response to the pressures that the postal sector is facing. And when it comes to falling is a better word, falling letter volumes and things like that. How has the Post responded? Well, they couldn't fall back on domestic e-commerce, that's for sure. So, coming up in just a moment, some lessons from the Caribbean with Thomas Roggendorf, CEO at Cpost International. I'm with Thomas Roggendorf, the CEO of Cpost International. Well, first of all, let's ask about the name. You're based in Curaçao. So did it used to be called Curaçao Post? And then is the rebranding part of the whole strategic shift that Post is undergoing?
Yes, it was originally Curaçao Post, which it actually still means, but we wanted to give a more interesting development and the name should represent that we are also international. So we shortened the C. The C is obviously for the Curaçao, and then international. So we are the Cpost International to give us that we are more than only being in Curaçao.
Now, the Curaçao itself is an island in the Caribbean, which sounds idyllic and wonderful, but you're subject to the same sorts of challenges that are facing other postal operators, aren't you?
Yes, we are in the Caribbean. It's a beautiful island, part of the Dutch kingdom. There are actually 6 Dutch Caribbean islands, the Aruba, Bonaire, Curaçao, and the 3 S's, Saba, St. Eustatius, and St. Martin. And we are part of the Dutch kingdom. Having said that, we are like independent within the Dutch kingdom. So that means we do everything ourselves except foreign affairs and the army. So we have our own postal services, and we face obviously the same challenges like the bigger postal operators. We see the digitalization, we see the mail volumes going down, but we do have the specific challenges that we do not have a huge domestic market where the big countries have a substitution from domestic e-commerce parcels into the system. The smaller islands don't have it because everything is reachable within 15, 20 minutes. So people prepare to go to the store instead of ordering it online domestic. Everything we are on an island, everything has to come cross-border. But as you also know, cross-border is less profitable. We have to do customs clearing, we have to do line haul. So it's not a one-and-one substitution that we have.
Now, the Post itself is what we in Australia would call a government business enterprise. You're at arm's length from the government. And so can you just describe how you operate and then what the challenge is that you've been set by the government? Well, I should ask, have you been set a challenge by the government to become profitable?
Yes, we what we call is a semi-governmental company, which means theoretically, like you mentioned, correct, we are a separate entity with a separate board, with that difference that 100% of the shares are owned by the government, and the shareholders, annual shareholders meeting is this, the head of that is this the Minister of Transportation. In that sense, we are also challenged by we should be run like a normal company and should be eventually going profitable. Having said that, if not, the shareholder is still responsible.
Now, let's talk about some of the things that you've been doing over the last few years to try and turn around the Post. You mentioned that domestic e-commerce is not the cure-all that other posts have had. So given your situation in the Caribbean and the logistics challenges and all that, what are some of the things that you and the team have been implementing to try and reach that profitable state?
Yeah, obviously when you're on an island which basically produces not so much, 99% has to be imported. So our biggest success in Curaçao was the cross-border e-commerce, where people go to, and specifically in our situation, they go to the United States, the Amazons and the eBays. What we offer them is a PO, a warehouse in Miami, and people can then do like a domestic shipment, and it's then shipped for free from Amazon into Miami. We consolidate it and ship it into the island. It's massive. We have on an island with 150,000 inhabitants, we have like 35,000 clients. So we have 1/5 of the population uses this system. And this is actually the lifesaver. And now already the second biggest product besides the mails, which is still the biggest income, but it's declining more than 50% in the last 8 years. It's the biggest growing revenue maker for us. A second one we have is we do quite uniquely in the Caribbean, we do also air and ocean containers and freight forwarding. So we do the whole pallet from a letter up to a container you can do on the island. And that's our third biggest revenue stream now. So we're growing very well in the container freight. Besides that, we have an export strategy where we are also not only looking into Curaçao, but we have physical locations in other islands in the Caribbean. Actually, we're doing in 6 the e-commerce product, and we do international virtually in other countries as well, where we serve the Latin America from the Far East. And then as a third strategy, we're heavily invested in IT. And we're looking at expanding our IT as a profit center, not only to other postal services, but we are having some of our products which we are doing outside the postal stream. For instance, the national telecommunication, where we do self-serving kiosks, but we also have Qmatic machines, we have POS systems. So we have like a palette of 26 IT products, which we now successfully start selling. And where this started in a little mama and papa store, where we're doing 2 and 3 kiosks, we're now having NDAs with 2 multinational Fortune 500 companies of the United States. And we're talking about 6,000, 7,000 kiosks, which they are willing to do through us, through a white label system. So it's becoming really now an interesting extra revenue in stream for the post, which we all need to have, because as we know, the normal letter mail will continue to decline in a significant way.
One of the things that when we were talking before we hit record on this in this interview, was about digitization of services, and even being able to do what you used to be able to do only through the post office, being able to do it through, say, your mobile phone, through an app. Can you just share a bit about what you're doing though with this? I've forgotten the name of it now. Is it Volt? What's it called? The banking payment gateway that you've developed? Yeah,
we call it Volt Pay. It's a payment app. It's actually the first workable payment app on the islands. This is part of what we call the virtual post office. So eventually our goal is, and I think we are very closely there now, everything should be able to do by a phone. So you order your package on Amazon. We have an app where you can upload your invoice. You can trace your package. As soon as it arrives, you can communicate with us. And now also with the Volt Pay, you can pay the package when it comes into the island. You need to customs clear it and pay VAT, and our transportation charges can be all done through our app. And then we deliver it to your home. So basically everything can be done by your phone. And in that sense, I think in the Caribbean, we are far ahead than other ones.
Now, so we had some interesting I should mention, everybody, we're at the Small Posts and Islands Postal Forum being held in Slovenia, hosted by Slovenia Post with Derek Osborne and co. And there have been a couple of other presentations from your team here today talking about some of these initiatives that Cpost is doing in terms of IT, in terms of banking, in terms of digitization. Just one other thing quickly before we finish up, though. I want to mention post offices. And one of the things that you or one of the members of your team mentioned was about being the front office or the public window for government. Can you just share a little bit about how that has worked? Because I know there are a lot of posts that have tried to do something similar with varying levels of success. Can you just share a little bit about that story?
Yes, already for 5 years, our strategy is we have the infrastructure and we have the people and we have the locations. So where we see everywhere on the island, the utility companies, the bank, they try to move away from cash and they try to close locations. We keep this as a part of where I just talked about the virtual post office as the older post office, the existing post office. We want to keep doing services. And one very important of these services is we want to be the window of the government. For instance, we do all of the car taxes, which means we have 100,000 cars and we're doing like 90%. That means in 3 months, we have more than 90,000 people for an island of 150,000. We have 90,000 people coming through the payments going through the first 3 months for car taxes. So everything where you need to receive something from the government, a stamp, a certification stamp, or a sticker for your car that you paid your insurance, those type of transactions we are very interested in doing, like a payment of fines from the police, speeding ticket, but also environmental fines, oil spill fines. So all those type of fines we want to do. So anything that the government is where you have to pay the government and still there is a need to receive something in return, we are very interested in doing. And the government is very slowly also supporting this.
I feel like, Thomas, we've only just scratched the surface, but we've been called back into the conference, believe it or not, everybody. So there's a really fascinating story about what's happening there in the Caribbean. Thomas Roggendorf, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you too.
Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, our friends from Omnic return to talk about parcel lockers. We've got Johan Peters returning to talk about green urban logistics, and many other great speakers will be coming up in the next few weeks. Make sure you don't miss any of these interviews. Subscribe to the Postal Hub podcast on your favourite podcast platform, whether it's Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, any of those sorts of ones. You can also subscribe to my email newsletter. Go to thepostalhub.com and sign up there for my weekly newsletter that comes out every time I release a new episode. And if you want more than that, you can also subscribe to the Daily Delivery Digest, which is a daily email with all the headlines from around the delivery world direct to your inbox. You can sign up at thepostalhub.com. And there's also Decarbonising Delivery, my other newsletter, which focuses on efforts to reduce and even eliminate emissions in the last mile. Sign up for all these great email newsletters at thepostalhub.com. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, you can do so. It's free. And that way you get my stuff in my feed. You don't even have to connect with me anymore. You can just follow me. Isn't that wonderful? What else? If you want to contact me, you can email me. My email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.